My name is Grammie Sal, and I've been collecting Native American artifacts and art for almost 50 years, and today we're going to share some of them. And right here is a gourd. And a gourd is like a pumpkin. A pumpkin is a gourd. Yes?
Do people speak Spanish?
No, the different Native Americans are different tribes, just like how Europeans are different tribes, how there's French and there's German and there's Italian. Well, in Native American, there are different tribes, and some of them, Mrs. Kennedy, you want to name some of them off?
So some of them are, well, my best friend is Native American, and she is a Potawatomi Indian. There are Creek Indians, Sioux Indians, there are Comanche, Cherokee is probably the best known, and each one of those tribes had their own language. And one of them that's still very popular in Oklahoma is Choctaw. And my son Colin took 3 years of Choctaw, so he can speak a Native American language called Choctaw.
Because in Oklahoma, in high school, they teach the different Native tribe languages. So it's very, very active there.
Yep.
So you don't know that. You might be standing next to somebody who's mainly Native American because they don't look any different than anybody else, because everybody in American is different, but the same. So then these are baskets, which when we come up, we'll touch them. This one I'll pass around and you can touch, okay? Because this one is nice and sturdy. And what they make these out of is plants. It's made out of reeds, which are the tall plants that grow along the edge of a river. And so we'll start right here.
Corey, would you please get that, my trusted partner?
Okay, and then take and hold, you sit down and hold it, and count maybe to 4 in your head, and then pass it to the person next to you, okay? And then, as you can see, that's all natural color. These are different colors, and how they get the different colors is they use different plants to make the colors, the dye in the water. And people go out and they pick all the grass and all the reeds, and then usually the women in the tribe, but the men too. Then they weave them together and they make all these different baskets. Some are ceremonial. Some, like the one we're passing, they would put their food in that and pass it through when they shared their food. And over here is, in addition to working like that, then the people who live in Arizona, who are Navajos, they do a lot of weaving with cloth. And they make a lot of blankets. And their blankets, they wouldn't just cover up with them at night, they would use them when they went out, like a coat. They would use a blanket like a coat. So I'll pass this through too, so you can see how tiny it is, and how they make it is this is a loom. So they take the little pieces of fabric and they put them together, and then they pull them down, and it makes a pattern. And the tribes that live out in Arizona, because different tribes live in different parts of the country and where they settle, and they are the ones that make the rugs.
Some of those you would also find, I know in some of our classes yesterday, we talked about the importance of horses in the Native American culture and how they primarily rode bareback without a saddle, but sometimes they would have a medium-sized blanket on the horse, and they would ride with a saddle that was a blanket. So still kind of bareback. What do you think of that? Is that smooth or itchy? It's kind of itchy, isn't it? Yeah. They didn't have the processes now where we take and we beat up all the material and make it soft. Sometimes those would come in all sizes, from teeny tiny for a baby to great big to cover a man's back.
Was there bandana that all the old people
There were settlers at the time of Pangea. That's a great question. Yes. But the collections that we're looking at today are more when the 7 continents had separated. We studied the continents last couple weeks ago. So Grammie Sal, this one that they're passing now, what would that platter be used for?
Usually, no, that platter would be used when they would have a meal and they would want to share things. They maybe would put bread on it.
Very nice. But Kyle, look, North
Yes.
Autumn is ready to pass it to you, the platter.
And did you talk, Mrs. Kennedy, did you talk about the buffalo?
We just spoke a little bit about the buffalo. Does anyone remember what the Native Americans would primarily hunt when they were riding horseback? Buffalo. You are very correct. Absolutely. They would hunt the buffalo. Did they waste any part of an animal that they caught?
No.
No waste. And so, do you think they appreciated the buffalo or they did not appreciate the buffalo? They did. So, Grammie Sal has some important ways that they would appreciate the buffalo.
Well, because the buffalo was so important to them because it was food, and they would use the hide, you know what the hide is? The fur, they would use that for clothing, and they would use parts of the muscles in that to make parts like this, like leather. They would use part of it to make the leather, and they would use, that's what these are. These are not buffalo nails, but they're supposed to be, like the hooves. So they use every part of the buffalo. Excuse me.
Even on the replica that Grammie Sal showed you guys, these in this replica are made of plastic. However, in the traditional, these would have been bone. Either deer bone or buffalo bone, elk bone, whatever they had caught, they would use every bit of it. You want to show them the buffalo dancer, Mom?
Yes.
How they would say thank you for the buffalo?
So then, in the different times, you know how everybody has different ceremonies and different holidays that they celebrate? And they would celebrate, and they would dance, and then they would wear all their ceremonial things, but they always appreciated the buffalo. The buffalo was always part of the ceremony. And so up here, like here's a buffalo, and then here is one made out of marble. And this one is made out of ceramic. Ceramic is like what your dishes are.
Like clay.
Like clay.
Oh.
It's
And then
made
the
out of
little
clay.
one with the
See these little ones here? Different groups, different tribes make different things, and one tribe makes things out of black. All of their little remembrance, they're always all black. And how they get them black is when they cook them in the kiln, they use buffalo dung. You know what buffalo dung is? They use buffalo dung. Buffalo dung is the other part of the buffalo.
buffalo waste. You know, buffalo waste.
But they bake it and it makes it black instead of making it white.
So this piece is called Buffalo Dance, and it was painted by a man named Lone Bull. That was his name. And what does this guy look like? His headdress, what does it look like?
A buffalo.
It looks like a buffalo. So his buffalo dance was to thank their God for the buffalo that they had already eaten and asking them to send him more. And look how beautifully he is dressed. And do you see some of the things that Grammie Sal has brought to you? He would be wearing them.
So,
Yes, sir.
What's that?
It's a good one. Go ahead, Mom. I'll hold it.
Oh, okay. This is a ceremonial dancer. And it's just when they would have their get-togethers, their parties, they called them powwows. And they were outside and they were around the fire and they would dance. And even like in Oklahoma, you can go on different Native American reservations and they will, some of the people of their culture will dress in the same clothes their ancestors wore and they would do the same dance. So this is a wooden carving of a Native American doing a regular, a dance.
It's like a replica of this guy. So you could probably find one. And these are called Kachina dolls. Now, do you think you would play with that doll, or do you think you would just have that doll for keepsake?
Keepsake.
Keepsake.
Right.
Grammie Sal has a doll that boys and girls would play with.
And here she is. And we'll pass her along. And when Mrs. Kennedy was how old were you when you got this? Maybe.
Oh, probably 13, 14.
And we used to go to different Native American reservations and you could go to a certain part and they would have like a museum. And then in addition to the museum, they would have a social area where you could visit and ask questions and then they would share their culture with you. And we went on a trip to Arizona, I think.
Arizona and New Mexico.
Right.
Yep.
And one of the things we brought back was Mrs. Kennedy brought this doll back.
So someone said, where are the eyes? You can see these are very primitive. She's got her boots on, but they would just use the little scraps that they would have, decorate them the best they could, and then they used their imagination. They used their imagination. So this was my doll when I was close to your age. Yes, sir?
Why does it have arms?
Pardon? Again, did they make things fancy or did they keep them simple?
Simple.
Yep, you can see a little bit of her hand sticking out.
And when they would gather and dance and celebrate their culture, somebody else did the drum. So if people are, and then they would do the shaker, like that.
And this guy would be up dancing.
See?
And Corey, can you take that gourd? Give us some gourd. Pretty cool, isn't it?
Kinda.
Very different, right? Okay.
And what do we have over there?
Well, I want to show them this little
Okay.
piece right here. This is one of my favorites. It's very simple, and I'm gonna pass it because they used whatever they had to make their offerings, their art, their things for powwows, their gifts to give to each other. And Grammie Sal talked about this was marble. This is from an area that had stone. These came from where there was clay. These right here, this is actually a present that I brought to her from some Canadian tribes. This is jade, because they have jade in the area of Canada that I was. And this is a piece of petrified wood. Wood that is so old it's been turned into rock. And Grammie Sal took care of Colin and Katie while we were on a trip. So here's Grammie Sal and Colin and Katie. So they would use what they had, and if they couldn't find anything else, or if it was freezing cold winter and they'd be stuck inside, they would use something like this. Anybody want to guess what this is? What it's made of?
Wood.
Not wood.
It looks like wood.
Looks like wood.
Tree.
Hamza?
Tree is what?
Not wood.
Clay.
Not clay, but good guess.
Marble.
Not marble. If you look right here, you can see these teeny tiny little holes. Yes, ma'am.
Mud.
Not mud.
Train.
Made of
Buffalo horns.
antlers. Very close. This is made of an antler, probably a deer antler. You can see, because this is the bone marrow on the inside, but it would dry hard and then they could carve it. Because some of the Native Americans lived where it was freezing cold and they had to do something in the winter when they couldn't be outside all the time because it was so cold. So this is a carving out of an antler, and it is a Pinnacle Prep School owl, and it's decorated with some turquoise because this one is from Arizona, I think, and turquoise is abundant in Arizona. So I'm gonna pass this one so you can feel what that antler feels like.
And then this, has anybody seen anything that looked like this? Because sometimes people,
A dream catcher.
you are correct. And
A basketball court.
that's a good guess, because it does look like that, but it is a dream catcher. Because one of the things that they thought about is if you had something like this, a circle, because the circle never ends, a circle just keeps going, and then they would make, looks like a basketball net, and hang it above the bed when you're sleeping, and it's supposed to catch your dreams. Because you know, sometimes it's kind of hard to remember your dreams. So, they,
Catch your bad dreams.
Catch your bad dreams and let your good ones fly.
At least some of your
that's
bad
why it's
ones.
open, because the bad ones can go through.
Very nice. Oh, let's, this very old piece.
Oh,
Now
okay.
this
Oh,
one
that's
we
right.
won't get to pass, but maybe Mrs. Kennedy will walk it because it is very old.
Yeah, because it's glass.
No,
Good guess.
what it's made out of is, in Arizona, it's very, very hot, and it's very, very dry.
Wood.
Close. What, and you can see it's so old that some of the wax that's on here, the beeswax, this is beeswax, like in a beehive, and inside of that, it's woven and it's strong, like this. But in Arizona, they would take and use this like a thermos. They would put their water in here and then put a top on it, and then when they rode on their horses, they had water up on the desert. Yes?
Is it made from rocks?
No, I'll pass it around, you can see.
I'll
Okay.
carry it past. So on the inside, I'll carry this side. You're gonna see woven basket, but would water stay in a woven basket when you're riding your horse bareback hunting buffalo?
No.
No. So they would use beeswax that they would dry and then stain. The stain would make the beeswax hard. They would use berries and make color like we use paint. And then it became a water jug or a water bottle. So you can see the woven, and then you can see where some of the beeswax has come off. So this would be like your water bottles. Yes, sweetheart, you can play back there on the table. See where it's woven, and then they covered it up. See where it's woven, and then they used the wax to make it waterproof. Can you guys see back there? Isn't that cool? And see the whole inside is wax. Wax on the inside.
Wait, it has a muddy spot on it.
That's the part that has fallen off because it's so old. This piece was old when Grammie Sal and my dad bought it, and now it's even older.
Did you paint it?
They painted it. They put the wax on it, and then they would use stain from things like berries and fruits and vegetables to paint it.
Like in a science museum?
Like in a science museum. Very nice. Miss Jessica, can you give me a time check, please? Okay, good. Thank you. Great.
So, we were talking about NKs.
Yes.
What was it?
So, let's talk a little bit more about the
Okay.
service basket, and then we can go to the art part.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
So, this basket here, and this one If you look carefully, you can see a face in there. These were gifts to my mom. Mom, you want to take the picture out?
Can't see.
From her aunt.
Maybe chocolate.
And my aunt's husband, his mother was a Native American, and I have a picture of her, and we figured that if my uncle was alive, he would be 120. And so if his mother was alive, she'd be like almost 200. So this is a picture of her when she was a young girl. So this is right when they first started taking photos, and they would take, do you ever see where how they used to do it?
We haven't studied that yet,
Okay.
but it was very old fashioned, and they would put in a, kind of like when you get an x-ray, a plate.
Right.
And then they would have to etch it. So this picture, when you see it, is not fancy. So
No.
these baskets came from her, but she had gotten them from someone else. So that's what makes them over about 300 years old, because they've been handed down in her family.
And how we take care of them is twice a year, we put them in water and we get them wet, and then we set them outside and we let them dry. And that way then they don't get too brittle. And this is here, and then this is another photo of a different lady, and I'm not sure how old this one is. This photo is over 100 years old, but see, then they put it on a piece of clay. So there you can see that one a little better.
Do you see her in there?
That same costume.
Isn't it amazing
Mm-hmm.
to think that in 200 years somebody could be looking at a photo of us?
You can see her, can't you?
Yes.
Now
It's
it's
okay,
like
it's
digitalized, it's fine, but see,
I'm
in
kind
those
of-
days pictures
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Now, does this picture look like our pictures? Here we go. Can you see her in there?
And his mother was in an area of what now is like Minnesota and North Dakota, up in that particular part of the country.
Oh, on the back, on the back. Here we go. Look in there. Do you see her in there? These pictures are not, you can just put it right there in the basket.
Who is that?
That is my great aunt, my mom's aunt's husband's mother. And that's what makes her like Grammie Sal. She would be either side of 200 years old if she were alive. Wow, kind of blows your mind, doesn't it? Kind of blows your mind. Now, a lot of this has been utility stuff, things they use to eat, have water, do celebrations, but Grammie Sal also has some pottery that was an art that is just for fun, okay? Why don't you tell me about this one, Mom?
Okay, and these are newer pieces. By newer pieces, I mean they're things that are less than 50 years old. And a lot of them people they make them, if you go out on a reservation, they always have, excuse me, they always have a museum. And then they always also have an area where you can purchase things that the artists, Native American artists of today are making. That's their business, that's how they make their living. And so we used to drive out to the reservations and go and see their museum and then buy some articles from them, right? So one of the first things we bought was this piece right here, because in the Native American culture, this is a wedding vase. And when a bride and a groom were married, the father of the bride and the father of the groom would come up front, and they would have a bigger container. This is a small one. They would have a large piece like this, and they would pour liquid on one side with the groom, and on the other side was the bride, and then the two dads would pick it up and they'd go like that, and then that meant that they were now their own family, because there's two families, there's two people. When people get married, it's one person and one person, and then they're married and they become one person. So that's why they call this a wedding vase. And then this one, when Mrs. Kennedy, where'd you get this one?
We got that one in New Mexico.
And this one, because Colin and Katie stayed with Grammie, because I was lucky, I always got to take care of Colin and Katie when they went on the trip. And so for a thank you gift, they brought back this piece right here, and it's a newer piece, and you can see
Chris,
that
cross knuckle sauce, please.
there's a boy here with a football and a girl here with a doll.
Colin and Katie.
Colin and Katie.
And at the time, he played football and she was very into American Girl dolls. So, and this piece is called a storyteller. And Miss Jessica's nodding her head, she has seen a few. This is a small storyteller because I only have 2 children for my storyteller to take care of, right? But if my brothers and I all chipped in, the storyteller, Grammie, would have 9 children because Grammie has 9 grandchildren.
I have 5 children and 9 grandchildren.
So
So it would be a whole bunch of people.
it would be bigger and all the kids would be stacked all around listening to the storyteller. Yes, 14. Well, and then the 5 kids are married, so you gotta add 5 more spouses, so there's 19. It's underneath here, she's hard to see. But I don't want to, yep. There you go.
And should we pass some areas?
Yes, let's talk about this first. Forgot to do this while we were doing buffaloes. You want to tell them about this one, Mom?
Okay, now, this is a real arrow, but it's not used, it hasn't been used, It was made so that people could have a copy of a real arrow. And as you can see, this is made from a reed, which is like a plant that grows in water. And on the end, it's not real sharp, but there's a point. And they would take a rock and rub it and rub it and rub it and make an arrowhead. And then on this end, they would always put feathers, usually eagle feathers, because eagles are like
What's that?
an eagle.
Yesterday I saw you.
You did?
Yes.
So the eagle feathers, the Native Americans are the only people that can possess eagle feathers, and they would need the feathers on the arrows so that when they would shoot the arrow from their bow, from riding their horse, they needed to glide further. And just like the feathers help a bird fly, the feathers help the arrow fly. The tape is just from hanging it up. No big whoop. Okay? Now the funny thing is, this is really stiff and hard. It could pierce an animal. This is probably for like a deer or maybe a wild pig. But this is the same on the inside of this, and this is what they use to weave those baskets. Hard, soft. Were Native Americans really good at using everything they possibly could? Yes. And again, what did they tie it on here with? That's not rubber. That's parts of the what they used as lace was part of the animal. Part of the animal. Oh, I don't think I want to pass this one.
Do you think we can pass?
I think we can pass this one.
Okay. So this is a collection of real arrowheads. And Miss Kennedy's dad used to travel all around with business, and he would go in all these stores and all these places and all these little towns, and you never knew what he was going to bring home. It was a surprise. And one time, we were very lucky because he went in the store, and somebody had collected all these real arrowheads and put them on and made it look like a decoration. So I don't know where they're from in Oklahoma, but they're from someplace in Oklahoma and they're real ones. So we're gonna pass them. You can touch them, but you have to be gentle, okay? And they'll just tap it, okay?
And these weren't made for the decoration. This person was a collector and they had dug all those up. They had found all of those. So those arrowheads, again, hundreds of years old.
Good. There we go. Let's go in between. If you move a little bit, then we can share. Here. Okay. Come back a little bit. Okay, now, like 3-4 people.
There you go. Guys, take it from her, please. And like 3 of you look at it at a time.
Yeah. And like we said, those are real arrowheads. They're not pretend.
Okay, pass.
Okay.
Pass,
okay.
please.
Next.
Fish.
Pass, please. Horabas and Hamza, share, please.
Okay, here. Move a little bit so 3 people can touch at one time. There we go.
Here we go. Mrs. Kennedy's going to help you out. Here we go. Sonia, take your turn. Hold on, you'll get a turn in a minute. See how sharp some of them are and some of them big, small, depending on what they were hunting. Okay, Mikhail, this is your turn. Issa, Mikhail, and Norfolk, come on. Pretty cool. They're sweaty. All right, Levi, Zahara, and Zayn, it's your turn. Actually, you stay over there with Muhammad, and you, Muhammad. Zara, peek up and you can touch yours now. Oh,
Yeah, we need the 3 girls in there.
yep, I got these 2 over here. Here we go. Pretty cool, right? That's amazing. And then, one of the things that they used for art and decoration was sand. Sand for the Native Americans is kind of like glitter for you guys. So if you will look, Grammie Sal has some pieces that are covered in sand. Take a peek up there.
I'll stand here and we'll go down the line. Now, I appreciate it if you just look and you can touch on the back side, but don't touch on the inside, okay? So 1, 2, 3. Pardon me? Yeah. Oh, it looks like the sun.
Oh, yes.
City.
So you have to know that Native Americans, and we've just started studying, but you'll learn more about this week, they celebrated nature.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll go here.
Their culture, their religion was all about nature.
Sand.
And they celebrated,
That looks like the sun. Right?
was all about nature. So you'll see a lot of nature.
Right. It's sand. Isn't that amazing? Think how long it would take to make something like that.
And they did art pieces as well for gifts.
For me.
Yes.
Don't be going to sleep.
There we go. See, that's all sand.
Right. No,
Sand
it's
was
all-
their glitter. You know how you guys love to use glitter to make things fancy?
I love glitter.
Say, don't touch, Issa. It will come off. It's very fragile.
Just up the back here.
So they would use sand. See the wedding vase?
Here we go.
Doesn't it look shiny? It might have some kind of stone.
And that's sand.
The frames are just frames. Mikhail, do you want to look? That's sand. Like glitter. You guys love your glitter.
Yes.
Don't
It's
touch.
like fucking gold.
It is. It's like
Glitter.
it's like using gold. And you can see some of their sand
Oh, there's sand.
had different materials in it to make it shiny. Okay.
And then one of the other things they would use, especially out in Arizona, New Mexico, is copper. And this is made out of copper. This is a newer piece, but this is made from copper. So they use whatever they could find on their land.
This one is made of copper. It's very heavy, and you will notice that it is mounted on a hide, on a skin, probably deer. So notice, we're gonna pass this one. Just notice how heavy it is as you pass it. There you go, bud. Take a look and pass it.
And they can touch the skin.
You can
because
touch the skin, yeah. There you go, pass it. It's pretty heavy, isn't it, for such a little piece of art? So the last piece that Mrs. Krause or Grammie Sal is going to show you is, pass please, 1, 2, 3 and pass. 1, 2, 3 and pass. Is this right here. I'm so glad you asked that. Mom, you want to take it over there? Or
Yes.
I'll take it over here.
Okay.
You tell the kids.
Well, you can read it.
Okay.
You read it for them. Okay.
So, my mom and dad collected about 3 pieces of this man's art. This is on like a leather, and he would etch it in. Lots of time, took lots of time. Rest your hands, please. Rest your hands, please. And he would paint it with something pointy. So it almost has some texture, you can see. And the man's name is Bryce Vaughn. Bryce Vaughn. And he is very important to the Native American culture of art. This man's work is actually in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. He was one of the artists selected to be in the Museum of History, American History, in Washington, D.C. He was born in 1936 in a little town called Veneta, Oklahoma. He is from a Delaware Indian wolf clan, Inaquaniti, which means distant voice. He held great respect for his Indian heritage. He has won several awards all over the country. You can see his art in places like England, France, and 49 of the 50 states. The only state that doesn't have any of his artwork is Hawaii. He was a father, a husband, an Indian artist, and he was a great spirit. And he was known as the distant voice. And this piece is called a signal. The Plains Indians used this as a method for communication, whether it be for danger or to hunt. They used hides, blankets, smoke, whatever they needed to signal one another. So you can see, Corey, what's he doing? What's he sending up? He's sending up an arrow. He's sending up some what?
Smoke.
Smoke. He's sending up a smoke signal. Yep. Yes, sir.
What's edge?
Etch means to like scratch into something. When you etch something, you sort of scratch it
It's
into
sort
it.
of like carving, but not as deep.
Deep. Etching is
Scratching.
scratching to create an art piece. Okay. We are almost time to go. We've got 7 minutes. Miss Joy, would you like to turn off the recording?